Okay, the first step in either chopping, mincing, slicing an onion, of course, is you must have an onion. A nice big cutting board. This cutting board is out of frame. That's how big it is. And it's sturdy. It doesn't move. You don't want some little lightweight thing that's going to move on you. You want something big enough that you can spread out and it's big enough for the task. Also, a sharp knife. I'm using a chef's knife. There is only one knife that is more dangerous than a sharp knife, and that's a dull knife. So make sure that your edge is nice and honed and sharpened. A dull knife, it's easier to actually cut yourself because you're having to push on things and your food could slip onto your fingers than having to slice through it. So that's why you want a nice sharp edge. Also, I recommend just a bowl to put the skin and anything else that you don't want from the onion. You put that in your bowl here and then empty the bowl at the end of all your cutting. All right, I'm going to leave the root end intact because that's going to help hold my onion together and it's going to help me to slice it better. So I like to just cut on one side through the root. Slice it like that. Sometimes you gotta just really grip it. So now you see I have a root end on one side and the other part of the root on the other side, and that will help us hold that half onion in place so it won't slide everywhere. Now I'm going to want to, of course, take off the skin. We don't want skin. So just peel your onion. Get rid of all these little pieces of skin that we don't need. Okay, now we have half of an onion. The flat side will sit on your cutting board and that'll help it from moving around. I'm going to trim this end, this top end. It's not the root, that's the root. We're going to trim this off because of course we don't want to eat that. So first you want to make a claw. You're going to hold the bottom of the onion with your thumb and you're going to grip it, the top of your onion, and I can show you this way, with your fingers, with your fingertips curled under like that. And we're going to use the sides or the front of our fingers kind of as our guide. The reason why you don't want to hold it like this is you could possibly cut your fingers. Ouch, that would hurt. With my thumb in the bottom to hold it steady and my fingers on top curled under, and I'm going to cut that end off that I don't need. Now see, if you have a knife that's nice and sharp, it just slices right through it. We're going to start with just a diced onion. And I'm going to show you some from the side view just so you can see it. I'm going to end up cutting almost all the way through the onion to the root end in a couple horizontal slices. So making sure it's secure, I put my knife parallel to my onion up about maybe 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to slice through. Now hold that onion in place and just slice through. You don't want to press too hard on the top with your fingers because, well, you just don't need to. You just need to hold the onion in place, and you need to have a little bit of give so you can get in through those slices, in through those layers rather. All right, I have made, if you can see, some horizontal cuts through the onion. You can see that, right? Now, if you look at the onion itself on top, you'll see it looks like little lines or little ridges. I can use that as my guide in order to cut down and make vertical rows. So I'm just going to follow that. I like to start in the center. Let's get it right. Let's make our claw. Sometimes it's easier said than done. And kind of just cuts down through the center. I'm going to turn it and just, and I can tell my knife is not sharp enough. Because you hear that? I'm having to push through it instead of slice through it. I could spend more time sharpening this knife. But for the sake of time, I'm going to forge ahead. You make sure your knife is good and sharp. All right. So I use the lines that I can see in the onion to cut through. If you want to make more cuts, you can. That would give you more smaller pieces of onion. But now that I've made my vertical cuts through my onion, I'm going to turn around again, and I'm going to now make a vertical cut against my other cuts. You see how it's just going right through. Now if you can see that, you see how you get that onion chopped up? You want to get it as even as possible. Sometimes you have some that stick together. You can just run your knife over anything that maybe is not as pleasing. You can run your knife over to make them smaller chunks if you need to. If you wanted to mince the onion, mince is very small little pieces, not chunky like this. You could just run your knife across it in a couple different ways. Remember to hold your knife, wrap your fingers around the handle, pinch between your thumb and forefinger right above the blade here. And that will give you good control of that knife. Anyway, we're going to get back to rocking it. And we're going to mince these if you need to. You just make them much smaller. If you keep going, you can turn it into minced onions. This is more of a dice. And that is how you cut an onion. Now you notice I didn't cut all the way back to the root. I could have cut back further, but I stopped there. So if you get to this point, you don't want to go too far because you want to be able to hold on to it. So don't go too far back to that root. You can always use this onion in a different way. Maybe put it in stocks and sauces and stuff like that. And cook with it later instead of trying to get it so close to the root that you might end up cutting your fingers. And that is how you cut an onion, folks.